Dr. Casey Ashton, and I am the director of Wake Invest in Women. It's a privilege to be here today, both in person and online for those streaming. We're excited to share with you today some of the myths around equal pay, but also to share with you some of the things that you as an individual can do as you go through your career path, as well as things that are happening on the employer side and the policy side in local government. So excited to have great speakers here today, and we're going to move forward with our first interview with some of our fabulous career coaches from Career Services. Oh, and let me allow my co-partner to introduce herself.
We can run right into this. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in person and online here. Just excited about what today brings as we explore the gender pay gap. This is Women's History Month, and what a vital time that we can reach out, connect in this way. So thank you for being here. Excited about phenomenal panelists right here. One of my favorite departments at the college, Career Services. So without further ado, let's get started. Yes. So we're going to move forward. Our two career coaches here. I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tamika Clark. Oh, it would help if I use the microphone, right? Hello, everyone. My name is Tamika Clark, career coach. I am primarily located at the Perry Health Sciences campus, but I work with all programs here at Wake Tech.
Hi, my name is Garla Glover Smith. I'm a career coach, and I am stationed here at Southern Campus.
Thank you both for being here. We're going to jump right into our questions at this point. Some good ways to lean into all of the data, all of the information that's out there. We want to hear from you, your thoughts, your experiences with students. So first question is, what have you found to be students or clients' biggest fears when they navigate job searching? We all want to know that, right? We're waiting, anticipating.
So in my experience with working with students and graduates, I find that since we are talking about pay equity, the biggest fear is salary negotiation. They either don't know what to ask for, or they don't know what to say in terms of how to negotiate. And so I find that those conversations are the ones that we see most often, and we understand with pay disparity, because there's such a huge apprehension when it comes to negotiating salaries. We find that women often negotiate less. When we look at, comparatively speaking, men are 4 times more likely to negotiate than a woman when we're talking about, negotiating your salary, your benefits, etc. So that continues to increase those pay inequities. And I want you to know that don't leave that money on the table. Definitely, find ways to work with other individuals in professions related to areas of interest for you. You can come see us at Career Services, and we can help you have those conversations so that you're not leaving all of those opportunities on the table.
Great points. When we talk about fears related to job searching, where do we look? Where are the places that really are for women? Have websites, salary data that really gives you a realistic view of what the salaries are, what you can expect. And I think with women, when we're job searching, we can't be in a hurry. We have to slow it down, do the research, maybe do informational interviews, talk to other women, other people in companies and fields, so we have a good idea about what we should be expecting.
Thank you for sharing some great examples, and I'm sure our students here are saying, yeah, I asked that that question before or felt that way before, so great ways to let us know where students are coming from. With that being said, for the students and clients that you have coached, what successes have you seen? Give us some examples, some case studies, because this is heavy-duty lifting that we have at the table, and
Sure.
I'm sure there's success stories out there.
So one success story, I do coaching outside of Wake Tech as well. And I was working with a very seasoned professional. She'd been in her field maybe 10 plus years. And she was trying to go from academia to nonprofit. And we spent some time really looking at her interviewing skills and her brain, how to communicate that in an interview. She got out, she got 3 or 4 interviews, she hit a couple of no's, but finally got a couple of yeses. And while she was in the interview, she did very well. We got to the 4th interview, and she knew she was going to get an offer, and she got an offer that was almost $10,000 less than what she was expecting. Her initial thought was, I'm a little upset that they would lowball me. And as we talked it through, we realized that that is the system that we're in. Employers typically are going to offer women and certain individuals lower pay, and that she needed to just ask. So she did the sandwich method. She talked about what her value was. She talked about what her research was, salary-wise. She talked about the value that she could bring to the employer. And guess what? They came back and gave her $15,000 raise and a title change. And this was before she even started that job. And so I think what I want everybody to recognize is negotiate in the beginning. It's much harder to negotiate during your review. So when you get a new offer, take the time to negotiate right then. And you have to make the ask. Whatever they come with, at least ask for 10% over and see what you get.
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Darla mentioned. Don't forsake the opportunity to negotiate. And it is better if you can negotiate at the beginning, but just know that no does not mean never. So if you are apprehensive and you're in a position where you did not negotiate at the start, think about those performance appraisals. Those are times when you can have that negotiation conversation and be ready with your research and information to support your value in that role. Or if you have been asked to take on additional responsibility with your place of employment, those are again opportunities for you to talk about and increase your pay. Garland mentioned a particular situation where it's a career changer. I often find myself working with career changers as well, and some of them are coming back into the paid workforce because they've been, stay-at-home moms, and they may not understand the value of what they've done outside of the paid workforce, but bring that to the table when you're having that negotiation conversation, because your involvement in community opportunities, your involvement if you started a small business, those are things that when you're coming into a corporate environment or even an academic environment, you can bring that conversation as added value to what you can offer to that employer. So with the particular student that I've had the opportunity to work with, she had a small business and was pursuing an opportunity in IT. And she got to that negotiation conversation, just like you mentioned with your example, and did not know that she could use all of the project management, organization, troubleshooting, problem solving, critical thinking skills to that conversation and negotiate not only pay, but negotiate benefits or other perks. So bring all of that to the table.
Well, you have touched on so many layers of what we should consider, not only as students, but as current employees in the workforce. So thank you for peeling back some of those issues and just diving a little deeper into what that negotiation looks like.
Question for y'all. You've both mentioned research, do your research. Do you have any recommendations for websites that the students could go to be able to do some of that research?
Yes, so I would recommend websites like salary.com, payscale.com. Those are great websites to use, and it helps because you want to have your research in a realistic way, right? So don't go in and look at paid data outside of the area. So make sure you specify that it's specific to the area that you're wanting to work in. Also provide information as it relates to your experience, as it relates to your education, and it'll give you at least a range for where you can, look to negotiate. And then also, outside of just the websites, look, your network. Think about people who are working in the field that you're wanting to be in and ask them, I don't know if you mind me asking, but can you tell me how much you make? They might share it. They might not, but, at least that's another avenue for you as far as research is concerned.
I agree. Another website I think which is important is Glassdoor. Glassdoor, and I believe Indeed, because you can post salary in an anonymous fashion, and so people are more likely to share their salary information. As I was kind of preparing for this, I ran across this term called underground spreadsheets. And basically, if you've been in a company before, or you've been in a company for a while, there may be underground spreadsheets, Google documents, where people add their race, their gender, their salary, so that there's equality in the company. And so just kind of asking around quietly, because sometimes employers can be a little bit unnerved when they know that you're contributing, trying to equalize the playing field. But please, if you've been in a company for a while, see if there's some type of underground spreadsheet that might show the salary data, which will then prompt you to make the ask to equalize the playing field.
Wonderful advice here. Now you're talking about making the ask. That's not easy.
No.
It can be very uncomfortable to ask for an increase in salary, a pay bump. Tamika mentioned how we need to outline added responsibilities, how they play a role in our next steps, present those. That can't be easy. So how do you coach students and your clients on the best strategies to present themselves in the best light?
So I always tell them to be comfortable with hearing no, because it is going to be uncomfortable. There's no way of getting around that. But the more that you practice, the more that you document your accomplishments, you celebrate your wins, and you have it documented, those are things that you want to bring to the conversation because you're presenting your value, you're selling yourself. Then if you've already done the research, as Darla mentioned, using Indeed, Glassdoor, or PayScale, or Salary.com, then you have an idea of, okay, when they come at me with this number, I know what the market says, and I also know, what I'm contributing, or I have the potential to contribute as a possible future employee. Then it makes that conversation easier. And I would say approach it like a conversation. We talk a lot about negotiating, but it's not a battle. I don't want you going in thinking like, okay, well, this is what I bring. I'm gonna come to the table, bam, that's it. It's a conversation. And when you take that approach as a conversation, I think it helps to ease the anxiety. And again, know your value, do your market research so that it's objective information that you're presenting. And then don't just think about salary. Think about your total compensation. So you're like, I want to make these big bucks. This is my annual pay. That's good. You definitely want to negotiate because there is a disparity. For every 82 cents a woman earns, a man earns $1. So there's a huge gap, and that hasn't changed over the past 20 years. So we need to have these conversations. But think about total compensation. Think about vacation, benefits, flex time, remote work. Think about maybe tuition reimbursement. If those are things that you want to have added to that conversation, you should bring that to the table as well.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
She covered it. The only thing that I would say is, to add to that is, remember, when you make the ask, the employer, I believe, respects you more, right? You're advocating for yourself. You're sharing what you need. It also goes both ways. When you're out in the world representing the company, you're going to ask for what's right for the company. So it's a characteristic that is shown when you make the ask. And so if that is one of the only reasons that you do it, let that be your reason, that you're showing who you are.
Wonderful. Just keep peeling. I could keep you here all day if we had the time. The art of negotiation, having the discussion, engaging, bringing your strengths to the table, all invaluable. You spoke of a sandwich method.
Yes.
Can you touch on that very briefly?
Sure. So I think whenever you have to deliver any kind of tough or difficult news, you sandwich it between good and good. So you might lead with thanking them for the offer, how pleased you are to work in that company, what you're looking forward to. You might add some of the skills or value that you bring, and if you can quantize it or put it in dollar value, that's even better, right? Or how you're going to save the company time. And then you make the ask. And the ask is the tough part, right? So that's the middle of the sandwich. And sometimes when you make the ask, there might be a time where you have to be a little quiet. Just pause for a moment and just see how it lands. And then again, reiterate what you're looking forward to, the value that you bring, how excited you are, and then let's see how that ask sits with the employee, whether they come back, whether they say no, what happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the follow.
One closing tip you can give our audience here. You have provided so much insight. We're energized about taking another look at this, I'm sure. What else can you leave us with before you depart?
Let's see.
You're giving so much. You poured in so much.
I would say ask. Just do it. Because, like Darla mentioned, there is a respect and an anticipation that you will ask. There's apprehension because we don't want to lose the opportunity we think we might, and that's really not the case. Because 70% of employers are expecting to have a negotiation conversation. So ask, and you will miss every opportunity that you leave on the table if you don't ask. Is there a saying that for every shot you don't take, you miss?
Right.
So ask.
Yes, I agree. That was my, tip that I think is most important. Make the ask. Make a well-educated ask. And, even if you're going after an internship, a lot of internships will be volunteer, but they don't have to be. They don't have, you bring a certain level of skill to the internship, whether it's customer service, whether it's organization, whether it's maybe even project management. Even as an intern, you should make the ask. I've had quite a few students who have been offered volunteer, no-pay internships. Go back and ask if there is a possibility that a wage can be offered, and guess what? They get it, got it. They got it, so you gotta make the ask.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I'm going to add in one additional tip for y'all. Make an appointment with
Oh,
our
that was
amazing
my
career
closing
coaches. They
Yes.
do phenomenal work and are going to be able to help you, because they can maybe seem a little overwhelming when you're thinking like, okay, I need to do all this research and I need to figure out how to do a sandwich method and I need to not freeze when they give me the offer. So being able to go and work with these amazing career coaches can only help you in this process. So that's going to be my closing tip is
That's it.
check these ladies out.
That's it. Ditto, ditto, ditto. And it costs absolutely, because you've already paid for it. This service is yours, so please take advantage of it. Dynamic coaches here. I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's just my personal. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much.
So we are going to do a quick shuffle transition, let our fabulous career coaches go. Thank you, ladies. And then we are going to bring up our next speaker, who I'm super excited to introduce to all of y'all. I'd like to bring to the stage our Wake County Board of Commissioner and Chair of the Board, Commissioner Chair Thomas. I think they took the mic that works.
Is it the mic that works?
Yes. Chair Thomas, would you be so kind as to just introduce yourself and a little bit about you to the audience?
Sure. So my name is Shanika Thomas, and I am the chair of the Wake County Board of Commissioners. It's an elected position. I was elected in 2020. I served as vice chair last year. This year, I'm the chair. There are 7 commissioners on the Wake County Board of Commissioners, and we are elected in staggered terms, so my reelection is in 24. And I've always been involved in community, involved in politics and policy. When I was a student at Howard University, I got to intern in Congress for the first Black woman senator in the U.S. Congress. Her name was Carol Mosley Braun. She was from Illinois. And there actually was not another woman in the U.S. Senate until Kamala Harris from California a few years ago. So it was almost 20 years difference. And that opportunity really inspired me to look into my community and see that there was representation that looked like me at the table. So that's kind of how I got to run for office.
I love that. Greatly appreciate you being here today. I have the privilege of being able to work with Commissioner Chair Thomas on a pretty regular basis because the Board of Commissioners does support and back the Wake Invest in Women initiative, which is an initiative that is working to close gender, wage, and representation gaps for women in Wake County and the Triangle area. So it is a great privilege to be here today with you. And I'd like to start with, you talked a little bit about the politics and how you came into that. Talk to us a little bit about why is wage equity something that you personally care about, but also maybe in your role as chair, how does that also come into play?
So it's interesting. We did a proclamation from the county for Women's History Month, and one of the things that one of my colleagues talked about was that in 1974, which actually happened to be the year I was born, that was the first time that women could actually have credit cards in their own name. Before that, they had to have their husband or their father's approval to have credit. And so for me personally, I think about that and I'm like, that's 40-something years ago, 49 years now. And the fact that women couldn't have credit, which also means that you couldn't buy things, like you couldn't own a home, you couldn't own an automobile, all of these kinds of things. And that's just changed in my lifetime. So for me as a policymaker, it's really important to see that women have the opportunity to be financially stable, right? And even as I look around and think about what it looks like to be financially stable, as an elected official, contrary to popular belief, elected officials don't make a lot of money. And so last year, we actually raised our salaries. We were making $25,000 a year, and we raised our salaries to $37,000 a year. And most people think that it's a part-time job, but it literally requires 7-day-a-week commitment. And generally, you can't work a full-time job. And so a woman, especially a woman of color, who takes an opportunity to serve the public in an elected capacity, also making that kind of salary, can't save for retirement. And so women outlive men. So what does retirement look like for women, especially women of color, when you've given up the opportunity to contribute to a retirement plan or retirement savings? You're already, like we heard earlier, making 82 cents for every dollar that a white man would make, and now you're giving up years of being able to contribute to retirement. So what does that look like for you in your retirement years? If you never get married, which, I mean, that's fine, that's everybody's choice. So if you never get married, then how are you gonna buy a house? How are you, so those are things for me that I personally think about. I think about it from, my mom and my sister and my cousin's perspective, my own perspective. What's gonna happen in retirement? What happens later in life? And how do you do things just now So it's important to me to really consider what wage equity looks like in this county.
That is incredibly powerful, and that concept of, we think of things as being history, but this is still lived history of, with credit cards. Even still today, women, you need to make sure if you open a credit card with your partner, if you want to be the primary person, you need to make sure that that's the case. I have two friends who went through divorces two people who went through separate divorces. They didn't divorce one another. And both of them lost all of their credit because they hadn't realized that all of their credit cards ended up being in their male partner's name. And that tends to still be the default. So something to keep in mind. We are still living through what many of us think of as history, but is not. So thank you, that's incredibly powerful. And you've already started touching on this about retirement and what does that look like in the long run for women. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of how do wage gaps impact our economic stability and mobility in our, for especially historically marginalized populations?
So part of it is that the impact on lifetime earnings is really about the ability for a family to thrive, right? So if you, in your lifetime, are always going to be under the poverty line or close to the poverty line, then that really impacts how your family can thrive, that your family has any kind of economic mobility, that you'll be able to buy a home. It's interesting, I was talking about marriage, you were talking about friends who divorced. I was a military brat, my dad was in the Army, my husband was in the Air Force, and honestly, if it wasn't for my husband, we would not have been able, and his VA benefit, we would have not been able to buy a home in our 20s like we did, because we just didn't have the opportunity to save. We were both first generation college students. Other folks in our family didn't have the opportunity to go to college. My parents are immigrants, they're from the West Indies. And so the opportunity for families to have income and for women to be able to contribute to the workforce and to contribute to their family's income means economic stability for families, but it also means economic mobility for families.
I love that you said not just economic stability, but thriving.
Correct.
So to be able to have that mobility, have that advancement, something that Wake Invest Women talks a lot about. We don't want just to put women into jobs. We want women to be going into good jobs that offer opportunity for advancement, for increases in salary, etc. Because you want to be able to thrive as an individual,
Right.
as well as thrive as part of your family.
Right.
So for the Board of Commissioners as a whole, I know you have a lot of goals that you work on, and economic strength is part of that. What does some of that look like in practice for Wake County?
So for us, we really want to be a beacon in this region for gender equity. We are an employer, a major employer. We employ over 4,000 people in Wake County, in the region. And it's important to us to be able to make sure that we are walking the walk, right? And not just talking the talk. So we want to make sure that families can thrive. We want to make sure that other companies are going to follow our lead as a large employer. And for economic strength, so I chair the Economic Strength Committee, one of the things that we've talked about is the incentives that we give businesses and organizations for coming to this area. We want to make sure that they're aligned with some of the same practices that we have as an employer, but also that we want for this region and why this region is attractive. And so that looks like pay equity, it looks like maternal and paternal leave. We want dads to be able to take time off when they adopt or when babies are born, so that they can, bond, so that they can contribute, so that they can, be there for their family in that way. So things like that, wellness leaves, those kinds of things, remote work, hybrid. As a government agency, that's not something you ever saw before, was hybrid work. And so that's something that Wake County is proud that we offer to some of our employees in certain positions.
Absolutely. And the public pipeline into the working for government, local, etc., is a great pathway that a lot of folks don't necessarily know about.
Right.
So highly recommend, look into what Wake County is doing and offering for recruiting employees, etc. The county as a whole is doing excellent work in that regard.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. What is a tip you would individual, what is a tip that you would give to current students as they are moving forward with their career paths?
I think, so I knew, I went to college, I majored in political science, I considered law school, knew that I wanted to change policy, but didn't know what that specifically looked like. And actually had a career in human resources for a while as I did policy work in the community, but explore all of the options that your interests can open for you, right? So when I think about county government, I think, okay, policy, I think elected, but we have fire, we have EMS, we have health and human services and nurses, and the sheriff's office falls under county government, the police office falls under city government. So when you look at government agencies, you see everything in your community. You see planning, you see parks, you see libraries, all of those things fit under county government or city government, municipal government. And so the opportunity for you to work for your county government, which honestly has some stability, right? County governments aren't going anywhere, technically. And so there's an opportunity there. And just ask what's happening. We offer internships at Wake County so that you can see what's happening. You can go out and be part of parks and recreation. You can be part of planning and see what planning and zoning actually looks like. Be a part of our housing department and understand a little bit more about housing and affordable housing, what that could look like for this region. Transit, all of those things fall under county government, and so there are opportunities for you all to have careers in any of those fields right in your county government.
And then this was not on the list, and I apologize. I've
No,
gone
you're
off
fine.
script. But
You're fine.
we were talking earlier about politics. You mentioned why you got into politics. How can we as individuals who aren't elected officials, how can we have an impact on the policy and what happens within our towns, our cities, and our county?
Well, a couple of ways. One is by voting, right? So be an informed voter. When you go to the polls, look at who the candidates are. Look at who your incumbents are versus new candidates. If you like what's been happening, and to say like what's been happening, it's more than just the media stories, right? Like get to know your local elected officials. The other thing that's really, really important is there's always an opportunity for public comment at your municipal meetings, at your county meetings. So whenever there's a topic that's of interest to you, you can look at agendas online for the county and for also the city of Raleigh, the town of Cary, wherever you live, Wake Forest, whichever municipality, and see what's on the agenda. And there's always at every public meeting an opportunity for public comment. We want to hear from you, and we make it convenient as we can to be able to hear from the public. I know last year we were getting ready for the budget, and Wake County has almost a $2 billion budget. It's like 1.9. And so we went out to the community to ask, how would you like this budget to be allocated? What are some of the things that you see in the community that really need funding? And we know we have the information from the manager, but then we have to make a decision, and those decisions are really complicated. So for us, it's really important to hear what's most important to the public. That's how we prioritize things. And I told Casey earlier, we had 2 people. We came here to Wake Tech so that the southern part of the county could be a part and ask about the budget, and we had 2 people show up to tell us what their priorities are. And we're spending almost $2 billion of tax dollars. And so for us, then it's your 7 elected officials who get to prioritize what's in the budget because we haven't had community input. So community input, public input is super important. You can email. You can email your elected official. You can come to meetings and speak about it. All of those kinds of things get you engaged in the process.
That is wonderful. Highly encourage folks to get involved. I have had the privilege of speaking at board meetings and that are open to the public, etc. They are fabulous humans who are, as Chair Thomas said, want to hear from us. And so don't let it be, don't let fear get in the way. And as she said, email if you don't want to talk in
It could be
person.
intimidating for sure to get up in front of a board. I mean, we sit at this, it's called the dais, and we sit up there and you actually have 3 minutes to speak and there are these little lights or whatever, but and it's your time to talk to us, so we don't have a conversation. So even if you're saying something, and honestly y'all, sometimes people say nasty, nasty things, we don't respond. It's our time to hear from the public. And so nobody's gonna come back at you and say anything. Most of the time we're smiling, kind of thing. And you get 3 minutes, right, to say what it is you'd like us to know. And so feel free to do that and send an email too. You can always send an email.
Absolutely. And the reason we really wanted to have you here to be able to be a part of this conversation is because our Board of Commissioners at Wake County truly care about this issue, because they want this county to be a beacon to bring in but also retain our citizens. Y'all walk the walk,
Yeah.
and that's really important. And so engaging the community to be a part of this process, who can then have an impact on policy, which then can have an impact on closing those gender gaps, is really important.
You're talking about policy, which reminds me, this year, for the first time, we have 2 women in leadership. So I chair the board, and I'm the only African-American woman on the board. And my vice chair is also a woman, and we've never had 2 women in leadership. But for the second time ever, the first time was in 2020, and then for this 22 election, we have a majority female board. So we have 4 out of 7 commissioners are women. So we are really interested in women's issues and what we can do in this region to be an example for women. One of the policies that I brought to the board when I first got elected in 2020, about 3 months in, we were doing a non-discrimination ordinance, wanting to make sure that there was not discrimination among our colleagues, but also our employees, and in the county, businesses, those kinds of things. And so we were thinking of all the things, and I looked at my colleagues and I said, let's add natural hair protection to that. And they looked at me and they said, what? They didn't understand what I was saying. So I had to explain that this is the way my hair grows out of my head, and I've been discriminated against. As a young person, right out of college, I went to a law firm in Texas, and with my husband who's in the Air Force, and I applied for a job at this law firm, and they were like, you have great qualifications, and you've worked in Congress, and you're really smart, but unless you take those braids out your hair, you can't work here. And so it's just been, and I didn't wear braids again for 20 years. But that stuck with me. And so when I had the opportunity to change that policy, because it still hadn't been changed in 20 years, and I saw it as an issue, I added that to our non-discrimination policy in Wake County. So our employees cannot be discriminated against or not promoted or any of these things for the way their hair naturally grows out of their head or how they choose to wear it, whether it's blue or green or dreads or locks or naturally curly or whatever the case may be. And there has to be awareness sometimes around these policies. And it takes public input, because my board had had 4 Black women before me, but none of them necessarily wore natural hair, so it wasn't their experience, but it was my experience. And so that's why public input is important, and that's also why it's important to have women at decision-making tables.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much for giving us your time. I know how busy you are, especially as the chair of our board. So we appreciate you sharing this wisdom with us, and encourage, again, everybody online and in person to get to know your elected officials.
Thank you for having me. I always remember, and I laugh, Dr. Rawls always says that, Wake County runs on Wake Tech, and it's true. So always happy to help. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Transitioning. Can you hear me?
No,
And as we are transitioning, there are a couple of questions. We have a few students here, and we have some trivia for you. All right. So this is going to be true or false. You ready? Ready. Okay. In 2022, women earned 5% less than men on average. True or false? Earn 5% less than men. I heard true. It's actually false. 17%. Wow. Okay, here's another one for you. Let me just ask you this. In one word, what does equity mean to you? Dealing with pay equity specifically. Can you give one word? think on it. And as you do you have one? Good, Google is good. We'll come back. I want you to think on this a minute as we transition to our next segment here.
Absolutely. Hello again, everyone. I'm excited to be able to chat with Caitlin Sanderson today from Wolf Speed, who's a talent acquisition manager. Apparently that's a hard word for me to say. I'm going to hand you the mic and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. So I'm Caitlin Sanderson. Like Casey said, I am the talent acquisition manager at Wolf Speed. So I support recruiting for our engineers and technicians across all kinds of different disciplines, mostly for our New York and California offices, but also here in North Carolina.
So we are so excited to have you here to be able to talk about things from an employer's perspective. So we've had a chance to hear from our career coaches, from our political arm, but it's important to have this conversation also with employers because you play a big part in setting salaries and offers and those kinds of things. So to get us started, why is gender equity important to you as an individual, but then also why is it important to Wolf Speed as an employer?
Yeah, so I'll start with Wolf Speed. I love our founding story because I think it's so central to how we operate still today. So we were founded in the 80s by four graduate students at NC State. So they're still students. They started working with this really cool material called silicon carbide and thought that it was going to be the future of semiconductors, which are the computer chips in pretty much everything these days. And so we have continued since the 80s to operate off of that sense of innovation, just commitment to something new. And it's important to recognize when you're committed to something like innovation that can come from anywhere. It can come from anyone, from any walk of life, any background. Anybody could have the next greatest idea. So not only is it important for us to make sure that we're equitable on a gender and pay scale sense because it is the right thing to do, it's the best thing to do, but also because we know that in order to have the best and brightest minds at our company, we have to pay them fairly. We have to live in a community and work in a community that in general supports pay equity and keeps an influx of talented candidates coming to our region. And so it's really important for us as a company. And then for me personally, also because it's a justice thing, and I've always been really driven by that. But my parents got divorced. I know probably a lot of us have parents who were divorced, and I saw my mom go through that situation where she lost her credit. We lost just about everything. And pretty early on, I just decided, that's not going to be the case for me, and hopefully I'm in a place where I can help other women, not go through that as well. So,
Thank you. So when you and I talked on the phone, we talked about company culture and how company culture plays into things like gender equity and gender wage equity. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? How does an organization create a culture of equity, and what does that mean to Wolf Speed?
that's a very big question. But for this conversation, when I think about pay equity and a culture of equity, I think about what does success look like to an organization. So, once you're at a company, you're going to be judged on a whole bunch of metrics. But when you're looking at your career path, a lot of those metrics are kind of subjective. Like your soft skills, are they, assertive in meetings, or are they bossy? Are they stepping up to take on challenges, or are they overwhelmed? So it depends on, what does success look like to the organization? Does that look like a traditional, white male model of success where you're in the office 9 to 5 and you don't have any outside work commitments, and you come from a traditional schooling background, and you're traveling all the time? Is that what success looks like? Or can success look different than that? How are we measuring the performance of our employees? So that's really important when you look at a culture of equity. But something that I'm really passionate about and that Wolf Speed is really investing in is also how we interact with our communities. So we're we're in a place of real privilege as a company with a lot of resources. We have money, we have jobs. We set the tone for a lot of what happens in an environment, in a community. And so you have to look at how does a company do business? First of all, are they treating employees fairly? Are they have good environmental practices and things like that? But also, are they creating pipelines for diverse candidates to get to their jobs? We support WITech programs like Wake Invest in Women, but also we have a great partnership with NCA&T. We support programs at the K through 12 level, like the first robotics competitions. We go into schools and do mentorships and things like that. So it's not just about once you're in the door, but it's also about creating a culture in the community of developing those pipelines.
So how would a student or a person who is looking for jobs and maybe considering applying to Wolfspeed, how would they maybe go about getting a sense of what Wolfspeed's culture is like?
Yeah, so I think there were a lot of great tips shared earlier by your counselors. And one of them that I loved was informational interviews. That's really important. And generally, if you ask around enough, you'll find somebody who's willing to talk to you. The recruiting team is always great. We get paid to do that. But other people who might be in the job that you want or the job that you want in the future. So that's a great place to start. But I also think that it's important, again, to look at where a company is putting their resources. I'm also, in addition to my day job as talent acquisition manager, I'm the incoming chair of our Women's Initiative Women's Employee Resources Group. And so a big part of my job is also advocating for gender equity at Wolfspeed in a lot of different ways. And that doesn't just mean events and one-off trainings. It means funding, again, things like First Robotics and the Society for Women Engineers and organizations where women can continue to develop. But it also means creating equitable company policies like our parental leave program, paid parental leave for women and men, because men having paternity leave also makes it a more equitable world for women. But also looking at things like mothers' rooms, wellness rooms, what is the policy on travel? Is that flexible for a recent mother? How do we approach hiring women who have been out of the workforce for a little while? And so, looking at where a company puts their resources, not just the statement that's on their website, is really important. So things like recent, press releases, that's a press release is where a company gets to talk really great things about themselves. So press releases, but also just news coverage. Companies have teams to make sure that the good things they're doing are getting out into the community. So make sure to kind of keep up to date on news with the companies you're interested in.
That's wonderful. And again, I love seeing the connections. And you talked about being the incoming chair for the Women's Employee Resource Group. And you said that word policy, and that y'all are able to have an impact on the policies that the company is putting forward, and how important that is to creating that culture of equity. So coming at it from an individual's standpoint, and actually I want to come back. You mentioned informational interviews, and our career coaches mentioned them as well. Would you talk a little bit about how somebody might go about setting up an informational interview, and are there website resources that they could use to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind as you're transitioning maybe into a role in the corporate world is that you have to be specific about what you want. And so people are busy. They're not too busy to talk to you, but they are busy, and they need to understand what you're looking for so they can give you what you need. And so I think it's important not just to find somebody on LinkedIn and say, hey, can I talk to you for coffee? Do some more research than that, and look into who are, again, the people in the jobs that you might be interested in. Look at their LinkedIn, again, Google them. There could be things published about them. They might have published research. They might have been involved in community events, and go to them and say something more specific, like, hey, I'm really interested in working for Wolfspeed. I've heard about the great things that that the company's doing, and maybe reference a news article. I'm interested in speaking with you because of your experience doing X, Y, Z, and I think that aligns with what I'm interested in. Would you have 15 minutes for coffee or a Zoom call or something like that? And that's going to get you a lot better response because you're being a lot more clear about what you want. I know that you have done your research, you're going to come prepared with some specific questions, and I think that will get you a better response overall. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
That was exactly what I was hoping you would say. Yeah, I think all of that is just a part of kind of what an individual can do. So similar with our other panelists, what are some things that you could suggest that individuals can do maybe beyond pay as they are either transitioning careers, starting a new career, that kind of thing? Is there any, as a recruiter, you talk to so many people, things that you would say, yes, definitely, or maybe even cautionary of maybe don't go down that route?
Sure. One thing that I'll say to preface this is that I heard this recently, someone was giving advice to me, and they said, be really clear on your plan, on what you want, or else you're just going to become a part of someone else's plan. And I think it's important to caveat that with, you don't have to know everything, but when you're applying for a new job or asking for a raise or a promotion or deciding on your career path, you have to be really clear about what it is that you want. And so that means not just, I want to make $100,000. That's great. Do it. But also, what do you want your life to look like? Do you want to work in the office? Do you want to work remotely? Do you want to travel or not? Do you want to work at a computer all day, or do you want to talk to people? So think big picture, and then think about what that company can do or what you need from a company to make that happen. I'm not going to say that it's easy to get a job because it isn't. I know that. But I will say that a lot of the time you hold the power in that conversation. We might be making an offer, but our business does not work without people. And so remember that and be open when you're going to these conversations. So we're talking about pay equity, and salary is important. Of course, start there. Have a number in mind, do your research, know what is fair, know that you're worthy of the job that you're applying to. If they're making an offer, you can do the job. But then also think about what you need to make that job work for you. So that doesn't necessarily mean salary. It could mean some of the things that we mentioned earlier. I will say, things like benefits, bonus percentages, stock packages, a lot of those are very difficult for us to negotiate on because they're based on things like market data that we have internally and internal equity, so making sure that people are getting paid the same amount internally, and leveling all kinds of stuff, boring stuff, that we decide before an offer. So it probably won't be uncommon for you to say, well, could my bonus target be higher, and them to say no. And that I have to have that conversation a lot. But could you give me a sign-on bonus? That we hear that almost all the time. I think everybody should be asking for a sign-on bonus right now. Can you give me a sign-on bonus? Would you be willing to reimburse me if I wanted to go back to school in the future? How much? How does that work? Get really specific. Okay, you say that this job is flexible. Well, what does that mean? How much can I work from home? How much can I come into the office? Are there times where that will change? If you're traveling, how much will the travel be? I thought of one earlier. For professional development opportunities, like let's say, I'll give this as an example. Last year, there was a women's convention in Houston. That is not related really to my day job. But as a development opportunity, I wanted to go. And so I negotiated that I wanted to go to that conference if they were going to pay for me to go because of XYZ things that I had done before. And so if there are things in your field that you want to go to, it could be anything. It could be a conference, it could be a training, it could be a cool event, anything related somewhat to your professional development. Say, hey, there's this thing that I want to go to in the future. Would you pay for me to go there? and can we put that in writing? So just think big picture about your plan, and then get creative thinking about, well, why couldn't a company do that for me? And then ask. And I will say, we love to get questions. Shows me you're really engaged in the process and that you want to make this work. And then I'll just share one other tip if I can.
Please do.
I was thinking of this example when your counselors were talking about how to and how not to negotiate. I recently had a negotiation with a candidate, and he came back to me after we talked about the offer, and he said, Caitlin, I took a look at the offer, and I need more. And I was like, okay, more what? And he said, just more. That is not the way that we want to negotiate. Contrast that to a different conversation I had with someone who was in, what your shoes may look like, which was a fairly recent graduate. He had about a year or two of experience under his belt. And he said, I really like this offer. I want to join Wolfspeed. However, at my current company, they match my 401k. And if I leave early, I will be leaving $5,000 in their match on the table. Would you give me a sign-on bonus to cover that $5,000 difference? And we like him so much, we gave him $6,000. And so that's a really educated counter. It's saying, this is what I have, I want to come to you, this is what I need to do it. Instead of just, I want more. That's not.
I feel like that was rather a mic drop move.
Yeah.
So I think we will leave it there. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise, especially as a recruiter. Because as our career coaches mentioned, that those conversations can be intimidating, and it's good to hear, one, that employers are expecting to have those conversations, as well as to have some tips on how to have them effectively, rather than just saying, I want more. We all want more.
Right.
But how do we effectively ask for that? So thank you so very much. Thank you all so much. Laura, I'm going to call you up here, Dr.
We're
Bethea.
gonna keep this moving. Thank you for your time. We know that the day is extended, just a few more moments, but this information invaluable, right? So what we want to do now is call back our career coaches, bringing you forward to the stage, whoever is going to represent, just to give more insight about our career services area. You heard quite a bit about how our team can support you. Corey Blanchett-Smith.
Career coach surprise! So thank you everyone for coming today, and to our wonderful career coaches who came up here and gave you invaluable advice. We know that they did that. So we have, in partnership with Student Money Management, so many things going on this month for you to take part in kind of investing in yourself. And one of the things we have coming up is a salary negotiation workshop, which might be, oh no, not coming up on the screen. Next slide. There we go. So we have a salary negotiation workshop coming up on Wednesday, April 26th, to put into practice all of the things that you learned here today about pay equity, and now learn what role you can kind of take on in that yourself. So how we want to empower you to do exactly what our speaker from Wolfspeed said, make those educated conversations and not feel like you have to just guess at what you should be asking for. We want you to feel comfortable and confident. So it is going to be offered in 2 modes. You can come in person to RTP campus and we'll have lunch for you there, or you can actually join in our virtual link. So we'll leave this up and you can scan the QR code or find all of our events on Handshake or Extra. So if you go to extra.waketech.edu or go to Wake Tech's Career Services Job Board Handshake, you'll find all of our events there as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yes. Career services, do not hesitate to make that next step. Salary negotiation, it's on its way. And we have one more resource you saw coming in. You can vote. So we talk about being engaged in the process to making sure your voices are heard, that your needs are met. But voting is one of those essential pieces to the pie that was also mentioned. So right outside of these doors, if you have not registered to vote, If you need to update your registration, You Can Vote is waiting outside. Nonpartisan, not a party-affiliated kind of organization, but one that can help you make the next step in that process. So, You Can Vote. Thank you for being here. They're out. Yes. So, if we go to the next slide here, we thank you all for being here. We know that you've taken time out of your schedules, but first, are there any questions that you have? We had a great conversation here, but any questions from any of our students here today, or any of our staff members? We will have an opportunity to stay around a few more moments, and our guest panelists are here, our career coaches are here, so just know that that opportunity will come along. All right, Visa gift card giveaways. Oh my goodness, did you know there were Visa gift card giveaways coming? Come on down.
You guys all signed in. I tend to be loud. You guys all signed in when you got here, and I took all of those names down. And we have a generator that is going to spin the wheel and see who gets what. And you do have to be here to claim it. So, just go ahead and set this down. And we'll just see where the name lands. Sembe? Sembe still here? All right. Now we need music playing. This is going on. Or I need that wheel sound in the trumpet. Diane? As I spin this, I'm going to remove the names so that way we won't get them again. Okay. Emily? Is that you? Okay. You know what, we're gonna do this the easy way. You four are the students that are left, correct? Okay, we're gonna do it this way. I'm gonna come back here, we'll make sure I got all four of your names listed, and then we'll spend it back. So, this is a little bit of a little time.
And as we are
And Frank just won, he's right here.
Congratulations.
There you go, there you go. Awesome.
It pays to stay, right?
It does pay to stay.
And as we're selecting our next winners, there is a survey that we want each of you to complete about your experience here with us. You can scan from the screen if you can, or there's some QR codes out on the registration table. Should be one on the back table here at the food. Yep, there it is. So please scan, give your feedback. It is valuable to us and the next steps with our future events. Do we have any more winners coming? They are coming. In the meantime, we want to make sure that you are aware of the many resources we have available. So, we will be sending you information. We have your contact information already. We will be sending it directly to you. Oh, we have another winner. Excellent. Congratulations, everyone. So we have our DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, Wake Invest in Women, Career Services, Student Activities, and AAWCC, who was the sponsor of our gift cards. Thank you. We want you to know more about them, what they offer. As students and as faculty and staff, there are so many pieces that we want to connect you with. So know that we will send you that information as time moves forward. Thank you so much. Are there any final thoughts for my partners here? Well, it sounds like a celebration is in order in the back with all of the Visa gift cards. We thank you all. Thank again to our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause, please. For their services, their kindness. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.